Whether it's biological kid or foster kid, adopted kid, it's hard. But how much joy do you miss out on in life if you avoid hard things?
Hello, and welcome to the Rise Again podcast. My name is Dr. Peter Risenen, and I'm your host here at the Rise Again podcast. Now, we're on to season 2, and the thing about season 2 that's going to differentiate it from season 1 are the things that I've gone through in my life since we were doing season 1. We have recently fostered and adopted a newborn. I killed my first bull elk with my bow and arrow last fall, and I've gotten into fly fishing, as well as am now the medical director of a men's health and testosterone replacement business. This has all been majorly life-changing for me, and I'm super excited to share some of the journey with you guys through the Rise Again podcast. So I hope you guys get something out of this. If you guys love it, please rate it and review it, share it with your friends. Let's get this stuff out there. We're going to share some amazing guests, and I hope you guys really enjoy season 2 of the Rise Again podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Rise Again podcast. Today, very excited to be able to sit down with my wife, the Mrs. Katherine Risenen, and a couple who we've really gotten to know and really enjoy. Their story is really exceptional. They're just exceptional people, have a great family life going on. They have 5 of their own biological children, and then they also fostered 2 and adopted those 2 children. And their story is special. We've really gotten to know them. And I figured that, you know what? People would benefit from hearing their story. I do believe that more people should consider at least adopting or fostering. There's so many youth out there who need this. And I think that their story is really a special one. So I wanted to share this with you guys. So today I have with me on the podcast, Matt and Shari Jones, and my wife, Katherine Risenen. And so we're going to sit down and just have a deep dive into starting, where they came from. We're going to go all the way into how they met each other, growing their family, and getting into fostering and then adopting, and just some of the things that we've learned and some of the advice that they have for us. So I hope you guys enjoy today's podcast episode with Katherine, Shari, and Matt Jones. So welcome back, everybody, to the Rise Again podcast. Really been looking forward to this interview for some time. We've got some really good friends, Matt and Shari Jones, and we got to know them around our time when we started fostering and prior to our adoption. The journey's been amazing. They're just such a fun-loving couple, and they have a story to tell of their own. So I wanted to bring Matt and Shari on the podcast today, along with my wife, and to kind of have a little bit of a conversation about them and about their life and kind of what they've gone through and how they've come to be with the children that they do have. So welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. We're glad to be here. We're a super exciting family. So I don't mean that. And by the way, the name of the podcast is very clever.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. One of the things I was thinking about is, why don't you kind of take us back? So Shari and Matt, what was growing up like?
Honestly, I grew up in a broken home, and my grandparents helped raise me, which was stabilizing. That was good. And would visit my dad and had minimal contact, but I knew he was, and kind of nominally Catholic, but not very devoted. And so some sense of God. And when I look back, I think I was kind of a confused little kid, honestly, but had some stability and grew up with good grades and in the band and all those typical things. And then when I got into high school, I was challenged by a friend to think about who God is and in relation to who I am. And if I were to die tonight, would I go to heaven? And I got to thinking about that, and I was like, I don't know. So I became a Christian, and that really changed my life.
What age did you say that was?
Someone came to me and challenged me at age 14. So very different trajectory than my biological family. There was a lot of divorce, and both my mom and my dad have been married several times. And so it really shaped my worldview, and everything started to kind of make sense. If God is love, maybe I didn't know that love because my family didn't know God. And so it just really gave me purpose beyond just myself and my own happiness, thinking, oh, maybe I'm made for a purpose. Started going to just a Bible church and met Matt really toward the end of high school, but that's where we met. And so that's like a nice place to meet someone, just because you have the same, you have a lot in common already. We both believed in the Bible and Jesus and had common ground. So
Matt, why don't you catch us up to speed? So you guys met, so bring us up to speed, Matt. Take us back to your childhood a bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. I mean, much like Shari, just a lot of divorce and, step parents, step brothers, step sisters, half everything. So, but I don't remember it being like a bad thing in the sense that that's just how I grew up and that was the norm, and I had fun as a kid, right? You were outside all the time, drinking out of garden hoses and running and playing and, just having a good time. But before high school, my family, my mom, my stepdad at the time, some of my siblings, we moved to the Phoenix area. So, kind of uprooted and came out here and came to high school here. And it was just so vastly different than what I had known and the kids I had known and things like that. And needless to say, I didn't fit in right away at the high school I was going to. So we never went to church growing up. We'd occasionally go like on Easter or, Christmas if my grandma asked us to and made us. And for whatever reason, the house we initially lived in when we moved to the Phoenix area, there was a church around the corner, Camelback Bible Church. That's where we actually ended up meeting. My mom just wanted to go one Sunday. And she said, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Sure," because I didn't know anybody. And I knew they had a youth group. And I thought, well, maybe it'll be a chance to meet some kids. And, maybe because they're from church, they'll be a little bit nicer to me than the kids in high school. So yeah, I went and, sure enough, they were nicer. And I made friends there and just kind of hung out and heard the gospel a lot and didn't respond to it right away. It just, I liked being at a place where, you were kind of accepted and it was laid back and they had all kinds of fun activities and different things you could do. And so I just kept hanging around and I was there like all the time, just a knucklehead on the side and sitting in the back. And kind of like Shari, the youth pastor at the time came up to me and he goes, "What do you think of all this? I mean, you're here, you're around the periphery and I see you all the time. Do you believe it?" Kind of wrestled with it. I'm like, well, I don't know. And, I just kept going and just whatever. And then one time the gospel was presented and for whatever reason at that time it clicked and I don't know, they're talking to me, I'm the sinner. I'm the person that needs forgiveness. And from there just became a Christian. And again, not to jump around too much, but that's where we met. I remember her in high school.
Okay.
Because she was, very pretty and she stood out. I wasn't.
Of course.
So I was just kind of the wallflower. I was going to ASU after I graduated and she's a year behind me. And then she went to ASU and that's when I made my move. I'm like, "Hey, I go to ASU. Do you want me to show you around? It's a big campus, I'm kind of a big man around there." And, we just sparked up a friendship and had, I think, a lot in common. So I guess that takes us up to, age 19 or so, 20, somewhere in there.
So 19, 20 years old, you guys you're kind of officially connected at this point, more or less like more of an interest in each other.
Yeah, we became very good friends. And then, whatever, life took us different paths. We kind of went separate ways, but always knew of each other. And
how long were you kind of on your own separate paths then?
Boy, quite a while. 8 years, 7 years. And then, at that time, I had moved away and come back, and she had moved away and come back. And, I was 28. I couldn't believe that she was still available. And, we, she was living with a sweet family. And I kind of put myself in their path to be around her a little bit more. And I expressed my interest in my own subtle way because I'm not the most forward person in the world. I think she picked up the hint and we got engaged in November and we were married in April. I mean, it went fast once we were engaged because I think we knew each other so well.
Because you knew each other.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Knew her character and been married for 20 years now. Happily married.
Yeah, married my best friend. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
I think we become best friends in college, but God knew we needed to grow up more. So it was a few more years of growing up before we actually got married in our late 20s. But yeah, 20 years.
One thing that I think about when kids get together and they get to know each other when they're younger, they don't really know, there is a period of like exploration, like, who am I? Like, what is there more out there? Because I think sometimes couples get married so young. There's nothing wrong with that at all, right? Getting married young. My parents got married, at 21, 23 years old. And I know a lot of couples get married 18, 19 years old. But there's an extra part of life that you kind of get on your own as a single person before you tie the knot. And I think that probably allowed you to know, like, fully and completely, like, yes, I enjoy these other things, but I really do need you.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of learning goes on in that time too, to actually live out on your own and away from your family possibly and be responsible for yourself. You know what goes into it before you just get married.
And I think we had so much divorce in our background on both sides that we never really had a healthy role model to what a successful relationship looked like. We saw a lot of people that jumped in and jumped out when it suited them. And I fear that if we would have got married early on, being immature or more immature, that we might have made that same mistake, right? You don't have any foundation to go to when things get hard or difficult. And if your example's always been, well, you just leave when it gets hard and you go your separate ways and you split your stuff up and find somebody new. We never wanted that. When we got married, we actually put in our vows that we vow not to divorce. And that rubs some people wrong at the wedding just because they had all been divorced so many times. But, it was important for us to show that we kind of want to break the cycle of what we've seen in the family. And certainly people have some valid reasons for being apart sometimes. I can say that. Sure. And, it just seemed like in my life, though, the example was just when the going got tough, people just got going, right? Mm-hmm. Just doing their own thing. And
they didn't work through it and come out better on the other side. It was just like too tough.
Yeah. So we wanted to be different than that. So I think in one way it was nice that we waited a little bit to get married. So
who were your role models, as you probably had some healthy models to look up to on your journey?
When we were in college, I kind of went my own not healthy path, hanging out with people that weren't good for me, and had kind of a rebellious time. And I think a lot of people in that age do. It just got so low and so bad that I ended up confessing some sin to someone at our church, and they said, you need to meet with this biblical counselor. In fact, you met her, my best friend, right? She said, I am so busy. I'm kind of losing my kids. I'm going to try to pull back and be at home, raise my kids, but you could probably live with us. And I was like, really? I moved in with them as an adult, about 23, and I was finishing college. And she and her husband were the most beautiful role model of just a loving home. Not perfect, but I watched them model, hey, I was wrong when I said that. Will you forgive me? They would seek each other's forgiveness when they blew it. And everyone's going to blow it. And I had never seen that before. I'd never seen someone say, yeah, I spoke harshly, or I shouldn't have acted that way. Will you forgive me? And to watch forgiveness and watch the love and intimacy and the fun they had in their home was like healing for me and gave me hope. I could have that too. I worked and lived with them and helped them and just cleaned and learned to be an adult who had purpose as a single, but all the while kind of taking mental notes on, oh, that's how you parent. Or that's, how a wife loves her husband and how she loves her kids. And what a blessing for me to have that. Even as an adult in a season before then I got married to Matt in my later 20s, I think that was such a gift to me that I am ever thanking them for 20 years of marriage later. I literally texted them the other day and said, you still have a beautiful family. All their kids are grown now. And look at the gift you gave me, because they basically look at as they adopted me. Like I'm just part of their family. They call me, sister, daughter, aunt. All the kids think of me as family.
That's a beautiful story. So many people don't have that in their life, when they grew up without that, and to have that healthy modeling. I mean, look at how it's not that we're blaming our past or blaming the people behind us or the people who did what they did in front of us or whatever. We're just changing. We can actually break the cycle, right? And look at you guys broke the cycle. And I would say that's the biggest gift that you can give, because mostly generational stuff just kind of keeps going because it's what you knew, it's what you saw, it's what you grew up with. How beautiful. Because when I look at your family, I think of a really loving, tight-knit family where you guys express your emotions. You say when things are on your mind. You say when things are the way they are. And I think that that's something that's learned. So the kids have learned that from you guys as well. So you model that for your children.
Like she said, sometimes it's modeled through humility too. Just, admitting when you've messed up or you've said the wrong thing or you've been unnecessarily harsh. So it's not that we try to model perfection. We try to model what's real. And that means sometimes you've messed up and you've done the wrong thing, and confessing it and asking for forgiveness. And I think you can learn just as much through success and failure if you try to look at both extremes. There can be good that comes out of something that was bad or wrong, or, something that you can find benefit in that maybe you had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, they say, there was a buddy of mine who said, we don't grow on the mountaintops, we grow in the valleys, so with what we go through that's difficult, that's where the learning takes place. Now, you saw people acting in a different way, and you as well, and you started to involve yourself with this different community and this different church and the youth groups and all that, and that kind of plants a seed, like it says in the Bible, Paul plants, Apollos waters, and God gives the increase, so the seeds were planted and there was water and God gave the increase. That's amazing. Tell us about raising children. You've got a beautiful family here. I'd love to hear about the kids and where that started.
We have 7. 5 are biological kids, 2 are adopted through foster care. Kids actually came relatively quick for us. Once we were married, I think you were pregnant within 4 months, somewhere in there. And that's our oldest, Gabe, who's now 19 and just finished up high school and is working full time. And then from there, they kind of came like clockwork, right? Every 20 months or so, 20 to 24 months.
With our first child, we had role models that Matt had served in the high school ministry for like many years with a dear youth pastor that he just loved. And he and his wife had done foster care and adoption. And we watched them and thought we should do that. And so I was just going to throw in that we actually went through, it was like 16 weeks to get licensed. So we went through this whole classes and at the very end found out that I was pregnant with our second one. And I thought, oh my goodness, we're not going to do foster care right now because I thought it might be a little too much. So I just want to throw that in because we had planned to, and we're hoping to actually foster adopt after our first. And then God just had another plan because we ended up having 5 children about every 2 years. We're so thankful for every one of them. But we had always wanted to do foster care early on.
Yeah, we had kids in our family about every 2 years too, like our ages. Because my mom, every time I would ask her, like, when's so-and-so's birthday again? She goes, you were 85, your sister's 87, then there's sister in 89, then there's her brother 91. She goes, and they're on odd years, right? And so it's kind of funny. She just goes down the line. I'm like, yeah, I can count. She's like, I'm just letting you know that, yes, you can count. You don't need to ask me what it is, right? So the seed was planted early on with the whole fostering and adopting thoughts.
It was important for us to do because we're very pro-life. And the argument that you often hear is, well, who's going to take care of all these kids that are unwanted? And we thought, well, I mean, we obviously can't do enough to take care of all of them, but we could certainly take care of some. And, I don't think we ever approached it with, we're going to do this many or that many. We're just like, well, let's go down the path and, see what happens because, we wanted to put life to our words and kind of do more than just say, oh, well, we're pro-life and, all this. We wanted to do something that potentially made a difference. And so even though we were having kids, it was always in the back of our mind that we wanted to circle back and, pursue this. And, after our 5th, we thought, okay, this probably the end of the road for biological children. And, it would be a good time to start it back up. And again, we were in a different church now that we had moved and, they were very big into foster and adoption and, there were classes that they hosted and things like that. So we kind of went that path and started the process again. And
the strength of that was that they had instant community. And if they already have a foster adopt type group going, a lot of times, like for us, when we started our journey, I mean, there was how many couples brought us meals? We had people bringing us meals.
Wow.
It was so nice to have a night off of cooking so I could just focus on caring for the children. And when you have a placement, honestly, they're so traumatized and they're so disoriented and they really need you to hold them a lot and be right there.
And let's get into that. You have 5 kids, right? Okay, so you've got the certification to foster or the license to foster, right? At this point. Now
we went through the classes again.
Okay, got it. This happens again. How would you describe those classes to people who don't know? I mean, some of the people who are listening to the podcast are interested in fostering, adoption, et cetera. How would you describe those classes? And
I think they prepare you as best they can to challenge you to realistically know yourself, know your limits. What can you realistically do? Because they don't want you to take a whole family of 5 or something if you really know your schedule and you know your temperament, and that's not like reality for you. Can you take a baby or can you take a teenager? I think they try to set you up for being realistic. They also try to describe some of the behaviors so that you do have a more of a sobered mind and an honest appraisal of where these kids are at. And then also they try to remind you to care for yourself because I remember the description of like a styrofoam cup, let's say, and you fill it with water and start poking holes in the bottom, kids crying, work, money, stress, like all the normal things of life. And then it's so quickly going to drain out. What are you going to replenish with? You need to replenish your own heart and soul and marriage. You don't want your marriage to suffer. I think it was really good at preparing us. It was just once you get that child, you still aren't prepared because every child is different and their history is different. And so it's still a journey that is going to be different from everyone else's journey.
I didn't think the classes were bad. It wasn't something I look forward to on a weekly basis, but I understand why they have to have something in place to prepare and talk about all the legal ramifications and different things that you'll encounter. And, it's an opportunity to kind of get to know the state and what's expected of you. So they were good from that standpoint. I mean, again, it's like anything in life. There's going to be things you hear that you agree with, and there's going to be things that you disagree with, but it set the parameters, which I was thankful for. And what's nice about it too is you're in with other people that are kind of wanting to do the same thing. So you kind of have support there. You have friends. You know, Shari makes friends everywhere she goes. She still talks to a lot of people from the class, you know, and they've all taken different paths, right? I mean, some people, they went into it and they thought, you know what, adoption isn't the end road for us. We just want to foster and, you know, help these kids as they come through our home, and hopefully they're going someplace better, or their parents get the help they need and there can be reunification. Others have adopted several. They've taken sibling groups and they've done a lot of things that are so admirable. And from the outside looking in, our case was one of the easier ones. I mean, as difficult as it can be and the stresses that come with it, you know, ours were relatively small, which I think helps. And our case moved much faster than normal cases to, you know, where they were severed, the parental rights were severed. So we had probably the best case scenario in our case, and it was still hard and it still had lots of challenges. And I think the classes did set the expectation, which helped us. They're like very clear up front. You go in this to help the kids. The state's goal is always going to be to put them back with their parents if that can be done. And, you know, I think some people were upset by that because they wanted adoption. We are looking to adopt. And, you know, I was thankful that it kind of reset us and thinking, okay, what's our motivation in doing this? Are we wanting to help kids, or are we wanting to grow our family? You know, and ideally we went into it knowing that, well, this might not end up in adoption, but we can still love some kids along the way and, you know, hopefully help somebody that's in need. And we did. And all that to say that I'm kind of jumping around, but I think the classes were okay.
Well, that's good. And then I was thinking, Kath, why don't you tell us what your thoughts were about the classes that we took before we got licensed to foster? You know, the classes ours was 8 weeks, I believe.
Yeah, it was 8 weeks. We were in person once every week, but then we did stuff online too. I felt like me, with the experience I've had with kids up till this point, a lot of stuff I knew already. And I'm sure you felt the same way. I mean, you were already parents of your children. However, these are kids that have gone through trauma. And so it's a lot different. So, I mean, I think that was good to help prepare for that. And then two, I thought it was just a lot of good parenting tips. I mean, I thought, well, some people that haven't been parents yet, or maybe even our parents, young parents, like they could benefit from some of these classes. Not that their kids have gone through trauma, but, you know, it's just some things. I just kind of always thought, well, I hope I learned something new tonight, you know, with those classes. The courses online, I was like, oh, you know, some of it was, but it was still, some of it like helped prepare me, like just for fostering. I was hoping that we could foster like babies. We were going to maybe adopt first. We kind of flip-flop. First, we thought about fostering, then we thought about adopting, then we went back to foster. So we were like 0 to 2. And I was thinking, well, how much trauma, you know, could like a 3 or 4 month old go through, or a 6 month? And they showed in one of those videos of like a young 6 or 7 month old that mom, you know, neglected her little one. So when she went to a foster home, she didn't know how to take comfort. Like she didn't want that. And I thought, oh my gosh, how difficult. Like it happens at such a young age. And that just made me like, oh, you know, and made me think, oh, I want them even tinier, that they don't have to go through that at all.
Reminded me of our daughter. She was 19 months. And I thought, surely 19 months is so young, you know. Already at 19 months, she was not only hitting us, but she was hitting herself and biting and crying over things that aren't normal and healthy to cry over, just small things. Hey, that outlet will hurt you. And, you know, having a meltdown because I didn't want her to touch the electrical outlet. And right. So I think the trauma happens so young.
Yes.
And it's real and so visible and startling, honestly. So even with the classes, you're kind of shocked and surprised that such a little one already has such startling behaviors. You know, we have 5 biological kids. They're all sinful and normal, healthy, vibrant kids that will break the rules. But never had I seen things like that, like self-harm. I kept telling myself, you know, we're not doing this because we feel so able, but because God is. We knew we were going to need help from the Lord, because you don't always know what to do exactly in the moment, except just to err on loving them. But, you know, sometimes the advice in the class would be like, we didn't agree with all their advice. But one thing that was good was like time in versus a time out. If a child's been isolated, you don't isolate them further. But you can have them sit with you and be with you until they're calm and regroup and try to self-regulate instead of isolating them further. Things like that were good to keep them with you. They need you. They need to be with us.
So why don't you kind of walk us through that journey then? So how long were you on the registry or the list? You know, essentially, how long had you been licensed to foster before you first showed up?
I think it happened relatively quickly. Initially, we were hoping to get a placement for someone that was already in the foster care system. And he was like the sweetest little boy. And he was so fun. And he came and stayed with us one weekend and he like just grabbed our hearts. And we were really hoping that that would be a placement that we would have for a while. And he was Native American, and that came with some additional things, right? Because the tribe has a say, it's not just the state, the parents, it's also the tribe. For whatever reason, that one didn't work out. And,
It's heartbreaking. I mean, we had him for 72 hours, right? That's not terribly long, but I mean, our whole family was completely in love.
So it was a good reminder, right, from the get-go that, hey, this doesn't always go the way you hope and, the way you would draw it up if it was your decision. So he went away and, hopefully he went to a great family. Obviously, we lost track of him after he left our house and he got moved from the placement he was at. But hopefully he's doing well. But after that, I think it was a couple weeks and I think we just said, we'll say yes to whoever, right? We had our age band. And if they say, hey, we got a kid, we didn't necessarily care if it was a boy or girl. I think we were initially hoping it was a girl just because of the way our bedroom setup is and the number of boys we have, number of girls, right? So, Corey came available and it's probably like 2 weeks, right? 3 weeks, somewhere in there. She was 19 months.
And knowing that the goal is reunification, because we already had this initial one, that's so hard because they attach to you and you attach to them. And that's good and healthy for them. She needed a mother. She needed me to be her mother in every way to feel the love of a mother. Whether or not she went back to her biological mother, I didn't know, or to someone else. But that is such a hard reality, honestly, is that until the case is closed, you always have to keep that in your mind that you don't know 100% if they're going to stay in your arms.
Yeah. And I don't think you'll ever forget like the first one that comes to your door. I mean, it's just different than what you think. They show up and there's 2 caseworkers and, it could be any hour of the day or night and they just come in and basically just hand you a child and
no clothes.
Yeah.
She had a shower cap on because they had treated her for lice.
And, she was part of a sibling group. So you automatically think, oh, how horrible it is for the kids. I mean, they're used to being together and all of a sudden they're kind of scattered to the wind. And the one constant they had is now gone and they're all just being dropped in complete strangers' houses, right? Because they didn't have any family that could take them that would be a safe placement as far as what the state determined. Your heart just breaks and she was completely silent. I mean, I don't think she made a sound for 12 hours and she just would look around and she had the shower cap on and just kind of a jagged haircut and just, she just broke your heart. And we had a crib up in our room and, where her head was, and where my head was in our bed was probably less than a foot. And she was just kind of in there and I just reached my hand through the crib and I was kind of stroking her shower cap because, right?
Yeah.
She just had a lice treatment. And I just remember she reached up and she just kind of grabbed my hand and she just held it. Eventually at that point, she kind of drifted off for a little bit at least. Your heart just breaks. I mean, they're just little kids and they're experiencing something that's so hard and difficult and I'm sure scary. They can't verbalize it. They can't vocalize it. And if you lost everything that you ever knew that was your constant, even if it wasn't great, right? Just to have it taken away from you and just you're put
Most
into a
important
stranger's
stuff
car.
in your life.
Yeah. Just they show up with a little bag, a trash bag with.
Did she come from parents or was she with kinship or who was she with prior to that? Do you have any idea?
She was living in a hotel with her parents.
She was in a motel room with her mother who wasn't there. That was the problem. I mean, she technically would live there, but she was never there. And so she was supposed to be monitored. What do they call it? When a family member is supposed to make sure the kids are safe.
Okay.
Right. So I think her sister or somebody was supposed to be the monitor, but the DCS kept checking in on them and no one was there or, it was starting to have enough checks in the boxes like this isn't safe. They're not being cared for. And I think what triggered it was she's the youngest of 4. So the oldest was in kindergarten and didn't get picked up from school. So that's how DCS finally was like, yeah, this isn't working. We need to take the kids because no one's caring for them.
Yeah, their mom had some known issues and, DCS left them there because at least the father wasn't on drugs. And then he committed a violent crime and got arrested. And as soon as he was arrested, the state went in and took the kids. 4 little kids were living there, the husband, the mom, and then it was just very transient. There was 4 other adults that lived there, kind of quasi in and out, and some potentially like prostitution stuff going on in the same room. And, the kids were just sleeping on the floor in really ratty conditions. And they had a tough go of it for sure.
So this is Corey and she has siblings?
Yeah, she's the youngest of 4. So it goes boy, girl, girl, girl. Corey was the youngest. And, that first night they all got scattered to different places.
Okay. That's unfortunate.
The first one was, in a group home. I don't know where the next one went. Maybe she was in the group home too, but they all got spread out.
Okay.
And it was that way for a while. We kind of got to know the family that took the oldest boy, and we kind of talked about how bad we felt for the other 2 that were still kind of bouncing around. And Shari and I were talking, if we were going to continue to do anything in the foster care adoption space, depending on the resolution, what happened with Corey. And, we thought, yeah, we will. And then it just made sense thinking, well, if we're going to do it, there's already a sibling out there that we could take in. So we reached out and told the state that we wanted to look at the second youngest daughter and see if she could stay with us for a while to see how that went. And, she has some medical issues, not anything that's like really impacting her long-term health, but it's more cosmetic things that need to be resolved. And, we didn't know if that would be an issue or not. And the next girl, she is as sweet as you could ever imagine, but she has a lot of medical issues, a lot. We just didn't know if that was something that we could deal with just with the busyness of already having a big family. Because, when they're in the state's care, the state expects a lot of you as far as getting them to doctor's appointments, getting them to counseling, getting them to all sorts of things when they need, assistance and they need counseling and things like that, which are good. That's not the issue, but we just didn't know if we could do it. So we took in Annika, which was, she's about 16 months older than Corey, and it's been good, but it's been challenging. Because she bounced around a little bit more in the foster care system.
More like a PTSD.
Even, things that we thought were bad with Corey were present and even worse with Annika.
Much more magnified in her older sister.
So,
and then the next sister that Matt's referring to had really brain malformation. So she needs quite a bit of therapy, speech therapies. She wears diapers and she's like 8. I'm just saying, so that was beyond what we were able to give her the care she really needed. But thank God she went with her brother. So she was adopted with her biological brother. So we can meet them at the park. They can still see them. Thank God for that.
Yeah. And, obviously I think that's where I really have so much respect for the people that do the older kids. Obviously her older brother, if you meet him, he's a really sweet kid, good natured, but he's just got so much baggage. He really recalls just the neglect because he lived it much more so than, our 2 that are much younger. He feels just the rejection of parents that, had a path to get their kids back and couldn't walk that path for whatever reason. They didn't want to give up the addiction, or they couldn't cut off the bad company they were keeping, or whatever it was. So he really feels the rejection of parents choosing something else over him, right? I think we're also wired to think our kids are so important and we do anything for our kids. That's what we tell ourselves. And, his perspective of that is, well, that's not true. My parents wouldn't do anything. They had a way to get me back and they wouldn't do it. He carries that. That's a hard thing for a little guy to carry.
Yeah, that's big. I was actually watching a video by a guy that I really admire. He's a psychologist and he talks a lot about development as a child. And one of the things that really came up and stuck out to me, he wrote a book where he really talks about love and relationships. But he said that love begins at home. The definition of intimacy is receiving and exchanging back and forth the 5 A's. And so he kind of describes those, and I'll walk you through those. But those 5 A's, and he says if any of those are missing, that's actually, you will grieve them as an adult. You must also accept that you must grieve that and you must move on, that you will never get that from that parent. You can't fulfill that later in life. It's not supposed to be heartbreaking in that I can't give this to this child, but they're always going to feel like they're going to need more of that, possibly, because they didn't get that. They're going to seek it out maybe in their relationships around them and from the people that they're around. And so these 5 A's, the first one is attention. Huge. The second one is acceptance as we are. And I think a big differentiating factor is growing up. If somebody grows up with a parent who feels like they're not okay as they are, they need to be somebody different, or who the parent wants them to be. That's a different thing. So accepting them as they are is number 2. And then the third one is appreciation. And that means to just cherish them, just to value them as a human being and as the individual that they are as well. And the fourth one is affection, and it's physical, and it's just non-sexual touch. So that's just hand on the shoulder. That's a hug. Yeah. That's being there for them. I was holding them, right? When they came into your care and they're just struggling. They just need that nurturing, right? And then the last one is allowing them to make the choices that they need for their deepest desires and wishes. As they age, that becomes more apparent, right?
Respecting them. You respect that they like the color blue and you like Black and it's different than you. And that's okay. That's how I see it. When we allow our teenagers to spend the money the way they work for their money, they can buy, that t-shirt that's ugly or whatever.
That was an interesting thing. These are those 5 A's. And anyways, it is really interesting. And he talks about when the 5 A's are present, these 4 feelings are allowed to be shared in full back and forth. You won't really be fully open about sharing these unless those 5 A's are present. And so those 5 A's, obviously, that's what he just defines as the word love or intimacy. Okay. So the feelings are sadness, anger, fear, and exuberance or joy. And those will be very present from those who experience the 5 A's and know that they're allowed to be who they are, and they're allowed to, and they know they're appreciated and valued and they get attention. And so it allows them to be fully self-expressed, really. And there was a funny story about, your kid wants to paint the room black. It's like, all right, you're an individual. You want to paint your room black? Great. That's excellent. And it was really interesting because I was listening to, it caught me sideways for a second. I was like, wait, what? Let my kid decorate the room however they want? No. And I was like, no, of course they can. It's their room. They can do whatever they want with it. It made me stop and pause and go, you know what? Absolutely. I was wrong on that thing or whatever. So it was just kind of interesting. But
what came to my mind was to hug them morning, noon, and night to make sure that they are getting that affection that they crave and need so desperately. Appropriate physical touch is important. The affirmation, before bed, I love being your mom. I'm so glad you're my daughter. I love being your mom. We say those things daily as we tuck them in after singing in prayers and stories. We just to say one more time, I'd prayed for you and hope for you. I'm so excited. I'm so glad you're my daughter. I love that you're my daughter. Just things like that to pour into them truth, because a lot of times we'll go around the table and say, what are you thankful for? And my Annika, who is 7, every time, I'm so thankful for my family. I'm so thankful for my mom and dad and my siblings. I'm so thankful for God who gave me this family in this house. And she's a little bit older than Corey, so I don't know what her memory bank is, but she expresses that every time. And so we try to do a lot of back and forth, verbal, saying what you already think.
As far as the A's, I was thinking of acceptance and appreciation, where if they have that present from birth, they feel safe and they feel secure. One time when Annika was here, maybe after a year, Gemma and Annika were fighting. And to me, I just made a little joke, if you guys keep it up, you're going to have to move out. And Gemma laughed because she feels accepted. She feels valued. And she just took it as a joke, where Annika got really upset. I was saying, you're not going to live here anymore, because she had already bounced around so many places. And there was instances where she didn't feel accepted or didn't feel loved or appreciated. And, she took it as, okay, well, I've burned my bridge and now you're going to toss me aside like so many other people have. And she got upset. And it was a good opportunity to say, no, we love you. You're our child. And you have to leave one day, but you don't have to leave right now. So, again, you see the difference in kids that have those things from an early age and how that helps in development, and it gives them confidence. It gives them assurance. It makes them feel loved. And unfortunately, you see also where maybe they miss some of those things and they don't have them, and it kind of racks them with insecurity, or they feel like they're not accepted, or they always have to perform. And if you fall out of good grace one time, then, you're out the door and onto another home to, start the process, the cycle all over again. So it was a good wake up for me, just to choose my words more carefully. What I took as a throwaway comment, just trying to be silly and whatever, and hopefully distract them from the fighting. It was really upsetting to her. And, I felt so bad. You saw just the countenance fall on her face, oh, I'm done. I'm out. I blew it. And where Gemma was just laughing, oh, Daddy, you're so funny. So.
Wow. And how old was Annika again when she came?
She was almost 4.
Okay. Yeah. So she was definitely older. She remembers.
I'll be more careful.
Well, a lot of times I'll say to the kids, you know what I love about you? Because honestly, their behaviors are magnified. The negative behaviors are way more magnified because they have had so much instability. So guess what? They're more unstable and they have more meltdowns. To on purpose say, you know what I love about you? And then fill in that blank all day long. I love that you share so well. Look at the way you're coloring. You're artistic, and just genuine praise, because kids know. They know when you're disingenuous. I think you're right. These categories of attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and allowing them to be individuals is so important. And they just haven't had that. Annika will have I call it a dread of loss. She'll see someone else having something delicious. It could be an apple. It doesn't have to be candy. I want an apple. I'm hungry. Well, maybe she's not hungry. but she sees that someone else is having something that she's not. And I think, wow, none of my bio kids ever did that because they knew they could eat anytime they wanted. We have fruit out all day long. But I don't know that she was always allowed to have her needs met. So as soon as she sees that you're drinking something, what are you drinking? I want some. And so we've had to really focus on areas like that to help her know, honey, you can have food and drink and anything you want anytime, and you're loved, and you can wait till you're hungry, or you can have it now, but it's okay it's always available, and to make her feel secure. And that ties into the attention and meeting needs. And
I think it really underscores the importance of good families doing foster care, whether they want to adopt or not. I mean, I'm not going to say it's for everybody, but I think it would be worthwhile if everyone at least considered it. Because it needs good families. I mean, I think of Annika again and just the instability she feels. We found out from the family that had her before us, right? A foster care family, but they didn't really treat her that well. She wasn't allowed to have dinner at the dinner table with the family. She had to eat separately at a different table.
With her sister and then another foster child in their home. They had 3 placements. It was a DDD level. I think they did it more for the money than really caring for the child's needs, because the foster kids, they did a separate dinner table. I mean, can you believe that? It breaks my heart.
She was there for quite a while. And when she transferred to our house, I mean, she came with no toys. She came with no clothes. They were meeting the needs as far as food and shelter, but there wasn't any warmth. There wasn't any loving. There wasn't any compassion. I don't know that family, so I'm not trying to judge them. I just know what was communicated is weird things where, again, they couldn't eat with the family. They had a separate card table set up in a different room, and that's where the foster kids ate while the whole family ate together. And it's just hard. And, sometimes when I find myself getting frustrated with Annika because of weird behaviors or overreaction, I have to kind of stop and remind myself of what she's experienced and what she's gone through and what kind of is formulating, these types of responses. And it tends to lead to compassion just because, it's hard. I don't think anybody would say they had the most optimal experience growing up. Everyone deals with hard things, but I never dealt with anything like that. I don't know how different I would be today had I had that level of trauma or abuse or neglect. At least I knew people loved me, and, everyone has hard things. So, but not that hard. And you just hate to see little kids going through it. And especially in Arizona, it's just so common. I think we're the number 1 state for kids in foster care. And, it's really prevalent, and your heart just breaks. And think, could we ever do another? And I'm like, no, no, I don't think so. But part of me wishes we could have the energy, the strength, the time. We're a little bit older now, and that's where I really look at people that are doing it and taking in older kids, not to hop around too much, but there's a lady that lives right down the street from us, a single lady, and she took in a high schooler, his friend that was also in foster care, who aged out of the system. Once they age out, they're on their own. They just turn you loose to the world and have at it. And she lets them stay there. And, it's hard. I mean, the things that she's relayed to us that high school student went through, the one that she still has, I mean, it is heartbreaking, where he was afraid to sleep in a room by himself. So he would sleep on the floor, next to her bed, just because the separation anxiety was so strong, and just the things that he had encountered, and how patient she's been to work with him and just love him, and I think make him feel safe. And it's all around us. I mean, it's just, you don't have to look hard to find someone that you could potentially do something that would make a difference in their life.
That example they gave me, that the foster kids sat at a separate table, that's so sad. But one thing that I learned in the classes, at least it used to be, that when you were fostering a child, let's say your bio kids were going to go to a camp, the foster kids were not allowed to go. So they've made a change in the system. And I thought, man, how hard would that be? I mean, come on, you're taking these kids in. They should be able to do whatever you're doing, your family. And so I'm so glad that they changed that. That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, these kids just want to feel normal, right? And if you're constantly making them feel different or set apart or not participate in what everybody else is doing, I think it just makes them feel that much more alienation and separation and different, right? I mean, they want just normalcy. They want to be a kid. And you're constantly telling them, well, you can't do that, or you can't do this, or, oh, that's for those kids, not for you.
Just reinforces the things that they're already being told, which is it's already been acted out. Like, you're a different kid, you've got issues, and you're not the same as these kids. Just reinforces that. So yeah, that's a big issue. So then what year was that roughly when you guys started fostering? You remember when that was?
We got Corey in November of 2017. It was a Monday night. It's almost like you don't ever forget it, honestly.
Give me the feelings that you had, and what do you remember from that night?
She was in the caseworker's arms, and I looked at her and I just thought she looked like an Arabian princess. This beautiful child. I just thought, who wouldn't do what they could to keep their, and I know that's judgmental because I don't know what it's like to be her biological mother and what she's gone through, but I just thought, oh, look at this beautiful child. Give her to me. Give her, give her to my arms. And I just, like Matt said, that she was in the crib, but she wasn't in the crib long because she couldn't sleep. She woke up and she was in our arms most of the night. We rocked her in a rocking chair and just held her. And I think she was confused and she slept some, but she also was she wanted to be held. So we ended up holding her almost that whole first night. Do you remember that? We took turns. The next day, we bought her a bow and fresh clothes, and my kids had her giggling and dancing in the kitchen. I'm so thankful that we have kids that were so excited to do foster care because they really distracted her and filled her love tank very quickly with a lot of laughter and hugs and smiles and giggles, and everyone wanted to hold her. But she came to me the most. I think innately she probably knew she needed a mama. She wanted to be up high and look down at everybody and feel secure. And they were all so excited. So yeah, I think it was just a mix of emotions because we're so excited and thankful. We're also nervous. I don't want her to also be taken away, but I have to remember, ideally, if her mom could ask for help and get healthy, it was better for her to be with her biological mother and father even, but he was incarcerated, so I didn't know. It was really all on the mother. And so because there was drug addiction, that's just such a long road. And so without her really asking for genuine help and reform, we just attached like crazy with Corey, and our caseworker said, please do. She needs it. She needs you to hold her as much as possible. Don't feel like you're spoiling her. Her love bank has been empty for so long. You're going to make a lot of deposits to try to replenish that. So.
Oh, wonderful. They've been so blessed.
What I remember from that night is it feels heavy when they come to the door, right? It just seems like a very somber moment. It seems very serious. And you're like, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for this child now. And I don't know what their background is totally, because when they come, you don't know anything, right? They're carrying a bag maybe of some stuff, and that's it. That's all you know. We're all gathered around the door and they just hand this child. There's 2 caseworkers outside and they're like, here you go, and kind of hand it off. And they're like, okay. And they started to walk away, and Gemma, our youngest, kind of just said, have a good night. Thanks a lot for the kid. And it just kind of broke the ice, and we all laughed. They laughed, and it was kind of a good shift in the mood, right? And we just had fun. We brought her in and everybody kind of held her. And again, it was more fun for us than her, right? She's scared and she's uncertain and all that. It set the mood well in the house. And, I think it brought some excitement that, yeah, we have a kid and this is fun. Like, who doesn't love a small kid, a baby, right? And somebody to play with and kind of pudgy. And, we just had fun. And, hopefully she felt that. I'm sure it was harder for her, right? She didn't know anything, but I think she felt that she was around people that were going to take care of her and provide for her and keep her safe and feed her and give her some normalcy where there hadn't been before. So she's still here and she's a Spitfire. I mean, she wears us out, but she's got personality upon personality upon personality, and she's a funny kid. She'll say stuff every day that makes me laugh, and and every day she'll do something that makes me scratch my head, right? Like, where did that come from? And, you've been with us so long now. How are we, still bumping into that? Like, why is that still a thing? But they're all unique for sure. And no one that ever has a placement, no 2 will ever be alike, right? I mean, it's definitely
even siblings, as you know.
That's right? For sure. But yeah, and now it's hard to look back on your family and remember a time that she wasn't with us, right? I mean, it just seems like she's been there from day one, and we're thankful for that. And Annika too. Each one has challenges, but we couldn't imagine our family now without them. They feel just a part of it, and we're thankful for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think about kids, and I remind myself that all children are God's children, right? They're all children of the Heavenly Father. And so they're on loan to us, whoever we get, whether they're our own biological or otherwise. And it kind of gives you a different perspective on it too, because if you think about them, it's like, well, my children are not my children. It's like, well, none of them are ours. We get to help raise them and try to be good adults, so that they can go out and do adulting on their own and give them more responsibility. And so then when they finally do get out, you've got your oldest graduated, and it's like, it's amazing. Gabe graduated, and looking at when the kids start leaving the nest, it's like now they're they're going to start making their own decisions. And like, hopefully they were practicing that.
It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
You guys have such beautiful kids, though. I have to say, those girls, I see them when we roll up, and like, my eyes get moist every once in a while. And I'm like, when I see them, just because they're so cute, those sisters, and they're just like, yes, I know that, you talk about the things that they're working through, whatever, but I'm just like, just such beautiful little souls. They'll be working through stuff for a lot of their life. They'll get over things, and then they realize that there's another layer of the onion to get through. I think that you're providing them that environment that they need. All these 5 A's, the beautiful family that they have. Look at the support system that they're a part of now, and you've got your church community and all the different people around you. So I mean, it's just like, what a big blessing for these 2 little beautiful girls.
Yeah, we're so thankful we were able to adopt sisters. I wish we could have taken all 4. I mean, I think that's ideal, but just that God allowed us to take Annika. Sometimes I'll hear them playing and they are giggling forever, for an hour straight. I'm like, they're still giggling down there. And I'll look and they are just having the most beautiful time, even just saying the sweetest things to each other. Like, I just love you so much. I'm like, I'm so thankful that they get to grow up together, just have that gift. I'll never forget when we brought Annika home. She was so afraid and wasn't bonded to Corey. Even though they were sisters, it's almost like they had been in the foster system separated, and she didn't really know her. And so being in our home, she got reacquainted with her sister, and that was a marvel to me. Just, you normally expect siblings to instantly be bonded, but they weren't. And so they rebonded here. And so I'm just so thankful that we were able to give them that gift.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wow. They will know that they have been adopted, right? But they'll know that they do have bio in their family. I mean, they're, blood sisters. That's so sweet.
Yeah, we do tell them whatever they ask. And if they don't ask, I wait till they're older and they'll ask more, because I do want them to know anything they need to know. So yes, they know they're adopted. They know that they have the same tummy mommy. And I always tell, I wish you were in my tummy. Oh, I just wish I'd had, in my tummy. And I wish you were in my arms from the day you were born. Oh, I miss that so much. But I'm so thankful God gave me you when He did. And so I just reiterate, anything true, but that they're so loved. They've always been loved. We always had prayed and hoped for them, even before they were born. And I just didn't know it was going to be them. And so that they always know that God had a plan to bring them to our arms. But yeah, so they know they're adopted. They ask which hospital they were born in. And when we adopted them, we could see on their birth certificate where they were born. So I just give them any information they ask, but not beyond, they're 6 and 7. So, they don't need to know heavy things. That can come later when they naturally will ask later. I just try to be honest, so they're always informed. And then I feel like it builds trust, so they can always trust that we always told them the truth and anything they needed to know about their bio family too. And so there's never confusion or...
Yeah, it kind of answers a question I've had about our own little guy that we adopted. It's like, at what rate of information do we expose him to about his birth family, bios? And we still have a relationship with a part of his birth family and a little bit more of a distanced one with the other part of his birth family. But at what rate do we disclose information? I mean, back in the day, my father is my adoptive father. And the pediatrician had told my parents that, 12 years old is the perfect age, let them know at 12. And it was like, this was a long time ago, right? But it's amazing how it's kind of kept morphing into, more along the lines of exactly what you've said and what you guys have done. It did work fine for me. I mean, I wasn't fully adopted, right? I thought my dad was my dad. And then at some point I found out he was my adoptive father. And, but at 12 years old, I was like, okay, great. But like, you're still my dad, right? Like when they told me, and he's like, yeah, no. Yeah, absolutely. We just like, it was heavier on them than it was on me, like the fact that they had to tell me, but I didn't know anything up till then.
And I want them to feel so chosen and loved as adopted kids. So they're very proud of it. Oh, we're adopted. My parents really had prayed for us and wanted us, and we're so excited. I have recently read in the Bible about how we're adopted in Ephesians 1 and become children of God. And so it's the most special thing in the world to be adopted. And so I always try to honor that and make them know how special they are and how special adoption is. So it's always been a very positive and
loving thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just having gotten to know you guys, your children are incredible. I really enjoy them all. They're very loving. They are very accepting. We came in the first time we ever met you guys. I came over and the kids were so excited to meet the little fostered guy. I was like, wow, if this was the holding environment for the other two, I was like, amazing, and that's what I felt. So I felt the same thing. I just felt love from the kids and from you guys. And I think that that's really special. And I think why it's important to share stories like yours is that one, it highlights that things can change, right? Intergenerationally. Two, that fostering and adoption is like such a huge gift to humanity. Like, think about the communities and think about the downstream ripple effect of changing one person's life by taking them into your home. Yeah, everything's changed. And so with that, when I think about this, I also want other people to consider, like Matt said, I want them to just consider whether or not they're going to. They don't need to come to that decision yet, right? You just take one step at a time. If you're going to open your mind up to considering adopting or fostering children, that's when you start to realize, it's like you almost like take one step and then the light appears right in front of you for the next step and the next step. And you don't need to know the journey. None of us knew it. It's wild. You know how many people I know who got their license to foster but never took that first step because it was unknown. It's like the whole process is unknown. We have to trust that God is going to guide us.
And help us. I know my own limitations. I'm very fiery Italian. And so I'm not naturally really patient and calm and all these things that I want to be. And I'm like, you know what, though? Once again, I didn't do it because I felt like I was so perfect or able, but because I know God is able and he is with me. And so he's going to help me. You show me this scripture here, for he chose us. He chose us before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless. It says, in love, he predestined us for adoption as sons. And so I think if God did that for me, I can be available to, like you said, raise this child with security and in a safe home for their whole childhood. Doesn't have to have any more baggage, right? So I can give them that gift of a healthy childhood. I had a friend who they had adopted a 5-year-old, so much instability, and they gave her 13 years of stability till she was 18. They gave her a loving, stable, wonderful home. She chose instability again at 18. And I heard that, and I think that can discourage people from fostering or adopting. But they said we would do it again because we gave her the gift of a childhood from when we received her into our arms in our home, that she didn't have to go through more and have more instability. And, she may come back around. I thought, that is true. You cannot control even my biological kids, the path that they choose. So, and as far as the involvement in foster care, I think people should at least take the next step, because a lot of fostering is like the people who brought us meals. Some of them are older couples, like grandparents who weren't going to do foster care, but they could be a support. You could be a casa. A lot of these kids, like the teenager down the street, needs someone just to hang out with him sometimes and encourage him. A casa, do you remember the acronym?
It's someone the court will match a young person with to kind of mentor them, to come alongside them, to pick them up once a week, go out, get a bite to eat, just talk to them. Maybe they've expressed some interest in, something this person knows a lot about and can kind of help them pursue that path. Court appointed special advocate, I think, is what the acronym is. They're neat people, and, it costs them a lot to volunteer their time and, to come alongside these kids where they maybe can't have them in their home, but, once a week, twice, a month or something like that, they can pick them up, get them out of the house, do something fun with them, spend some time, show them other people care about you, right? You have this foster parent that's pouring into you, and, there's other people too that are willing to come alongside and help you, hopefully have a brighter future than maybe what your initial exposure in life would have indicated would be available to you. There's people that love you, and it's the sweetest kind of love. It's a kind of an unconditional love. They're reaching out to these kids. I'm sure they get satisfaction from helping, but there's nothing that's going to profit them in this, right? There's no monetary compensation. There's nothing like that. It's just they're doing it because they want to love people. And, there's, again, I would say that not everyone maybe should do foster care, but I would love if everyone considered it. You can remove a lot of obstacles, right? We're not a perfect family. I'm not a perfect dad. I'm not a perfect husband. I have my shortcomings and I'm failing all the time, but you know what? I can still love and try to pursue people and try to give of myself. Some people say, well, I can't afford it. Well, the state will give you a stipend. You get some money that comes in, and it's not really enough to move the needle or make a difference or support yourself on, but it certainly covers the expense of having the child in your home. So, there's a stipend, and I just think a lot of people have more capability, maybe more than they realize. And
well, on that note, one of our daughters has a cleft palate, and I didn't realize that they would have health insurance till they're 18. And so all the surgeries that she's going to need are covered and every appointment is covered and things like that I think people don't know. I didn't realize that you even receive the stipend after you adopt them. So any needs that they have, there's really no reason to not get involved if that were a concern, the financial. I was so thankful because she does have quite a few medical appointments and I'm so thankful she can get the care that she needs. And also just as far as the CASA or the support you could give to people who foster, like the mother down the street with the teenager, they need a break. I mean, teenagers, in fairness, he's had a lot of trauma, but he will cuss at her and sometimes run away. And so sometimes it's nice for her to have a day off where someone else is pouring into this child and she loves him, and she's giving her whole heart and life to him, but it is draining. And so there's a lot of ways to support people who are on that journey, I think.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all those ways to help support. And right now too, I know when our little guy was still having visits with his mom, when the state worker came to pick him up, she said that there's a lot of kids right now in foster care, a lot more since the whole COVID thing. The need is really great right now. She said that a lot of kids haven't even been able to go see their parents because they don't have enough case aides, which I know they don't pay a lot, but maybe if there was a person that didn't really need to work, but looking for something to do, a retired person. Yeah.
It could be a grandma because our case aides were 18 and a half and weren't even buckling the kids in correctly. And I was dying because I walked out and said, here, can I help you with that seatbelt? Because it looked so loose and it made me nervous. But my point is it could be anybody. And in fact, even better if it's someone has any life experience, because when you are at a visit with the biological parent, sometimes they are high and you have to have a little discernment and wisdom maybe to remove the child. And anyway, I could be anybody, any stage of life. I think that people don't know that. They can do things like that.
Into the argument, I hear that well, you never know what you're going to get with foster child, right? If I open my home for foster care, well then, I'm just rolling the dice. It's like, well, I would posit that you're probably rolling the dice even with your own biological kids. You might have whatever genetic potential, but it's still roulette in the fact that you're not going to avoid difficulty even with your own biological kids. So that's the one thing I hear a lot is like, oh, I don't know if I could do it because they're coming with a lot of stuff or we're not sure what they're going to deal with later in life. And it's like, what about your other kids? It's like, yeah, well, that's true. We don't really know about them either.
You don't know what kind of choices they're going to make. You do the best you can when they're in your home, under your roof. You give them those 5 A's and do the best you can and give them all the love. But they're going to make their own decisions at some point, and you just pray.
Well, I think even on our worst days, perhaps, one of my children's just having a hard day and she's crying more than usual over things that I'm like, honey, it's okay. And, I feel like I've comforted her for the 4th time and it's only 8:30 in the morning. And I'm like, what is it with this? Is she tired or off today? But I think, even as difficult as those mornings are, I think, she is doing so much better than when she first came to us. She is amazingly beyond where she was. Think of where she was. You're talking about a load of head lice sleeping on a motel floor and with drug and different issues all around her and being neglected and not having enough food. They were eating at like the convenience store, like hot Cheetos, Kool-Aid. I think, you know what, God, this is right. Or even if I'm, not being as patient as I want to be and I'm feeling frustrated, it's like, this is better though. I need to just remember the perspective of anything that is worth it is going to be hard, but it is so worth it. You are changing their lives forever and they are going to have opportunities for their whole life to have a stable marriage. Just like I came from a decent home, a good home, but I had brokenness and now we can change that. We've been married 20 years. We're closer than ever. My husband and I are more intimate than ever. Talking about intimacy, and we can give them the opportunity to have that. They don't have to repeat the same brokenness that was normative in their family. Not one grandparent could take them, not one aunt or uncle. Think about that. That's a lot of criminal records and no one could qualify for a background check in their bio family. So I'm just saying I feel privileged to give them the opportunity to have a difference. So anyway.
You don't want to sugarcoat it and make it sound like it's easy every day. It's not. I mean, in any time, whether it's biological kid or foster kid, adopted kid, it's hard. But how much joy do you miss out on in life if you avoid hard things? There's been times we've been frustrated and we've been pulling our hair out and we've had to leave the house and just you're kind of at your wit's end. But again, we couldn't imagine our family without them and we feel blessed because of them. It is hard to love people and kind of put up with just people, right? I'm not always easy either. I'm not. But again, I keep circling back to it. I mean, I would love for more people to consider foster care and adoption because I think people are more capable than maybe what they think they are. And they have more to love to give than maybe they think they do. And they can make a bigger difference in a kid's life than they probably think is possible. If you only had perfect people doing it, then no one would be doing it. And if you only had people that had X amount of money in the bank, well, there's probably going to be a lot more kids in foster care. And, again, I say it's not for everybody. It's not. And I don't expect everybody to do it. But I think, you could make such a dent, especially in Arizona, where there's just so many kids waiting for placement. And there's such a great need that, those numbers could be knocked down dramatically. I apologize about the dog. I don't know if it's picking it up on
this
there.
This is a family environment. We've got kids. Every once in a while, a little guy pipes up in the background. He falls over or something happens and he's crying. And then we got the dog barking and the kids are playing. It's great. One of the things I was going to say, I think about that quote, you learn about a society by how they take care of their children. You don't need to wait for the government to step in. You don't need to wait for the state to step in. You can do your part in your community by just looking into it. So anybody who's just been listening to this and you're just interested in hearing about how the journey has gone and whatever else, absolutely. Like it's totally, we're not saying like Matt said, you don't need to pick up the phone and call today, but think about the difference that can be made. Maybe it's someone in your community, or maybe it's being a CASA and helping a kid out, being their special adult that they get to hang out with, who accepts them and takes them to lunch or to dinner and wants to hear about their life and what they like, and maybe goes bowling with them or plays laser tag or goes to do something fun with the kid. And there's a lot of different ways that we all can help. Like there's, if you think about us being like spokes of a wheel with this whole societal issue, right, that we're dealing with, we all have a different place.
Mm-hmm.
For some of us, it's foster care, and some it's adoption, and some it's these different roles that people can play. You could be a K-SAID, you could be a CASA, you could go work for one of these agencies. I think in the Valley, there's around 27 different agencies that a person can go through for fostering and adoption. So there's a lot. And in fact, we had such a good experience, I would say, with our agency. I'm going to have the CEO of Child Crisis Arizona on the podcast. I'm going to go to her office and just talk to her about what vision is, and kind of, I want to bring more awareness to this stuff. And you guys did that for us. So I appreciate what you guys have done too. You impact other people, not just the girls, so it's one of the pieces that you just don't know the people you're going to impact by the things that you do.
Yeah. And you just see what a difference it makes. I mean, when you look at your guy, how sweet he is, and he just like adores you. I mean, you walk in and he's hugging your legs and smiling and he's beaming and he looks healthy and he looks happy and he's just full of life. And, you think how you've maybe redirected what it would have been his path had there not been an intervention. And I'm not against the parents. I'm really not. And if they can kind of turn around what they need to turn around, I think it's great that there's reconciliation, there's reunification. And, I like that the state really gives them every possible chance to get their child back. And there has to be such neglect to finally have that severance. I just rejoice for these kids when the parents aren't able to do that they're somewhere they're loved, right? I mean, you compliment us, well, we compliment you right back. I mean, you can see the love that he feels by just how happy he is. And he's out there right now. It looks like he's putting cars in his mouth and, having a good time.
Well, thank you so much. We have admired you from afar and up close. And so here we are sitting around the table, enjoying this time, just even getting to spend time with you guys. Thank you for sharing your story. And if this inspired any of you, I'm going to put some contact detail in there. If there's somebody who wants to send you an email and ask some more questions, I would imagine it's probably part of your ministry is the work that you've been called to do. So we'll share that whatever contact information will be in the show notes for you guys. I mean, you can reach out to Shari and Matt and let them know what you thought of the podcast, and at the same time, their story and how inspiring and motivating they are. So
thank you for having us. We loved it. We love you guys. Privileged.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, when you approached us, I was like, wow, boy, I'm not a terribly gifted speaker and I don't know if I have much to say, but it's just good to talk and let people know what needs exist and maybe where they can plug in to meet that need. So, we appreciate you guys so much and we thank you for the time today. And hopefully someone hears it and it gives them something to think about or consider. And we'll kind of go from there. And, if we can answer any questions or kind of go a little more in depth with what we experienced and maybe what they could expect too. I mean, I know each case is going to be different, but certainly happy to relay anything that we know or have experienced ourselves.
Thank you so much. We really wanted to get your story, and thanks so much for sharing. And
Thank you.
You're a blessing to us.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Rise Again podcast. Great episode, hey? You know what? I really love interviewing people and I love getting people on who have things to share with the world. So if you have a really cool guest that you'd like to get on the podcast, email me and I will do my best to get them on the show. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week and stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast.